It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Someone pointed me to a recent article by Alex Griffith. This article is called Stop Hiring Scrum Masters, Hire Value Delivery Leads Instead. Now, I can tell you, the first impression I got was, oh no, here we go, battle of the titles, right? But then he has a subtitle that says, The emphasis and outcome are what matter. The framework doesn't. And when I read that, I said, ooh, now I know why somebody sent this to me, because this could really take things in an interesting direction. So I'm going to start by reading part of his article and then, of course, give you some of my commentary as we go. He says, about a decade ago, Scrum blew me away. Same here, my friend. My small company of scientists and engineers were doing fine, following what we'd always done. But when we hired a new manager, he taught us a new way of working, using something called Scrum. People immediately started coordinating every day. I did paired programming for the first time in my life. Every item the team was working on was transparent on a board, sometimes virtual, sometimes literal. Nobody on the team sat on a task for weeks and weeks on end struggling to make progress. The team even finished some work ahead of schedule. It was eye-opening and inspiring. Okay, let's pause there. So right out of the gate, my first impression is that you're right on track with what you're saying. And I've seen this happen in many organizations where someone comes in and says, hey, we're going to introduce Scrum. But then they start introducing things like pair programming and peer review, which are not part of Scrum, but are pretty significant and very, very important. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is if we're trying to make sure that we have alignment with the naming conventions, both of those things, the peer review, pair programming, whatnot, those came from Extreme Programming or XP. But lots of people do still call it Scrum and bundle it all into one. And they want to Scrumify or they want to agilify or sprinkle some Scrum dust on what they're doing. So let's see where the story goes. As an engineer on a team, I shared my excitement with my lead and did a lot of self-study on Scrum. He offered me the opportunity to be a product owner on another team that was now lacking one. I loved it, and while that project was short-lived, my team did very well. My lead then gave me the opportunity to be a Scrum Master for a 2-person IT security team. Spoiler, it went horribly. Okay, so here we go. So first of all, right out of the gate, a team of two is not a team. A team of two is a pair. Just thought I'd throw that out there. And I don't know that a team of two would need a Scrum. This just is ripe with things that go wrong. But based on this, he goes into a paragraph talking about why not hire a Scrum Master. Now, I'm hoping that he's going to take this down the road of, what a Scrum Master does and how it's different. But let's see where he goes. Labeling a job as Scrum Master prescribes a team to a certain set of practices. It also pigeonholes the person to fulfill a well-defined role. Scrum used to be loosely defined, and the latest Scrum Guide is short, but it is still a framework with prescribed roles and processes. Instead, my preference is to hire value delivery leads without putting Scrum in a title. This new title places emphasis on leading the effort to help the team deliver value. The emphasis and outcome matter for me. The framework doesn't necessarily. Okay. At first, I was concerned. Now I'm less concerned. I love the way you said the framework doesn't emphasize where your heart lays. That you appreciate the whole thing about value delivery leads. In my class, oftentimes I jokingly say, I don't care if you call the title Gummy Bear number 74, right, or Gummy Bear number 47. You need to understand what responsibilities that person is going to be accountable for, and they need to understand what their job is. The only thing that concerns me so far about what you have here is that it almost feels like you're trying to go back to there was a small period. I want to say it was for about a year or two where it was like, we don't need any roles, man. We just need to know what we're doing, man. It's far out, and we can just go, and everybody can do their thing, and can make sure we have coverage, man. And just everybody does something and give peace a chance. And it was so loosey goosey that leadership didn't know who to turn to. People didn't know who was responsible for what things. So, in a sense, I believe that we have become too rigid. But in the same breath, I say we have to have some guidelines. You have to have some boundaries. You have to have bumpers or guardrails up so that people can understand, at least until they get well into the flow of Scrum, and then they can go from there. That job can be accomplished by Scrum, Kanban, XP, or any other Agile framework, whatever means best suits the team. After all, as another author put it in Against the Rules, um, it was a podcast episode. The role of a coach is to first take out all the hard work and the distractions. Second, make it easy for them to have good behavior. And third, make them want to have good behavior. A really good coach will make the players think they don't need a coach. True, and also not true. Depends on the health of the team, right? If you have a team that is just starting out, or a team that's really been having a rough time and they're trying to get back on the horse, and you treat them in this manner, what's going to happen is they're never going to learn what the bad or good behavior is, right? If you don't call out where things need to be corrected, if you treat them like uh, like they don't need a coach and that everything's fine, you're going to quickly learn that different teams are in different places and you have to pivot and adjust based on where they are. The one thing that bothers me about articles like this is that oftentimes they say, hey, you shouldn't be pigeonholed. But what they're actually doing is pigeonholing you into not having anything. Um, I get where you're going with the value delivery lead, or whatever you call the person. Let's keep going and see if you get the ship right again. I don't want to make judgment prematurely here. So he goes back to when I failed using Scrum. He says the manager's pitch to him was the sysadmin and security officer are struggling to get work done on time. They could probably benefit from Scrum. And you were successful with your dev team. Why don't you be their Scrum Master and help them be more efficient? It wasn't until a couple of months later when I interviewed for a new job as an Agile consultant that I realized that was my biggest mistake. After I described the situation as a failure, the senior consultant asked me, it sounds like Scrum was a poor fit for the team. They might have benefited more from a Kanban approach where they didn't have to commit to a sprint's worth of work at a time, and they could do things, the priorities change daily. They could do things on a FIFO, first in, first out. Did you consider that? Nope, I didn't even know what Kanban was at the time. Well, I'm a big fan of it now, so much so that I coach people to use personal Kanban. I thought Agile and Scrum were interchangeable, which is exactly what I just said a few minutes ago. I hadn't understood the Agile values along with the umbrella frameworks, including how, when, and where to apply them. Alex, I like you a lot better now. Needless to say, I didn't get an offer to be the Agile consultant. That would come years later. But I learned a lot and pursued official Scrum training uh, that year so that I can master all the fundamentals and get things figured out. Bravo. We are finally in a place, Alex, and everyone listening, that we are having more and more organizations reach out to me and say, I don't want Scrum certification. I just want to know what I can do as best practices to help my Agile implementation be improved. If we're going to do peer reviews and pair programming, that's great, but we don't need to bite off and do all of XP. If we are going to have sprints or iterations, that's great, but we don't need to do pure Scrum. We do need to meet daily, but it might not be a daily stand-up or a daily Scrum meeting. That meeting might be more of a quick huddle or an accountability huddle to make sure we're all on the same page, or a daily Kaizen meeting, right? I mean, there's so many ways you can look at this. And I guess what I'm trying to say is many, many years ago, I wrote an article called Driving the Agile Hybrid that was incredibly popular. And basically, many, many moons ago, we're talking circa 2005, 7, somewhere in that range, I was telling people that eventually no one will be doing pure Scrum or pure XP or pure anything, that people are going to have a hybridized version and then we're going to choose the better part. And I think that's where you're going with this. And as a coach, you need to help teams choose the better part. And it's not always easy. And he goes on to emphasize this, and I want to make sure I draw this out because this is also something I believe. He said, Scrum Master is a great role, but it has a horrible title. Hiring someone explicitly as a Scrum Master is suboptimal for one obvious reason. Scrum is not always the best fit for every team. I always say Scrum is not a one-size-fits-all model because most people don't look good in spandex, but I get exactly where he's coming from here. Scrum isn't always the answer. In more cases than not, it's a hybridized version of lots of different things. And Scrum can kick it off or Scrum can get people moving in the right direction, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Scrum is going to be the perfect answer. There's no silver bullet, right? Especially once you measure the maturity of the team and the team gets through some of their basic performance scenarios and whatnot. Then you need to lean on the metrics to see how things are going. And that's where you might discover that it's better to be framework agnostic. It's better for you to have agile team leaders and to have people who can ensure success for the team, no matter what you call them, and work towards that goal. Um, so, whatever you decide to call your Scrum Masters, don't be bashful about making sure people understand that there are responsibilities that need to be met, and that I don't get hung up on a title as much as I do that the responsibility has coverage. So, if there's one thing you can do to help you be better organized and to help you do what's right, my advice to you would be make sure you have coverage, make sure people are aware, and do the best you can to help recognize where gaps are so that you can get those gaps filled quickly so that the team can have success with Agile. That's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to talk about, learn more at agiledad.com. Would love to talk to you. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.